lived at the time about 100, roughly 150 years before the Churban of the second Beis Hamikdash. At that time, the king was Yanai HaMelech. Yanai was a great-grandson of Yochanan Kohen Gadol, who was of Hanukkah fame. Matisyahu ben Yochanan Kohen Gadol, he was, Matisyahu was one of the Hashmonaim. Unfortunately, already by the second generation after Matisyahu ben Yochanan, the children of the Hashmonaim did not follow as much, being that these were the leaders of Klal Yisrael. They saved Klal Yisrael. Hanukkah was basically created, was done because of these tzaddikim. But Yanai, who was a great grandson, was, as we said before. Remember that I said that there was there was the Vaisusim and Tzedukim. There were Talmidim that we said before that became disenchanted, so to speak, because they felt they're not going to get any schar. So they started a whole movement, and it was becoming very strong at that time. Yanai HaMelech became king at 23. He was very young, so he was very influenced by the modern Greek society, and at that time had a lot of strong influence, even though it was after Hanukkah and they defeated the Greeks. In any case, what happened was that Yanai got upset at the Chachamim, and he literally started killing them all, started killing all the Chachamim. Now, Yanai's wife, again, we always have to come on to the women to save Klal Yisrael. Yanai's wife was somebody called Shlomis. And she was the brother of Reb Shimon ben Shatach, one of the Tanoim, one of the Gedolei Yisrael. And she went and basically saved. She was trying to save as many Talmid the Chacham as possible, and Reb Shua ben Parachia was one of the people that he wanted to kill, so he ran away. And he ran away for a while. He ran away to Alexandria, Egypt. And stayed there for a while until Yanai HaMelech died. Now, interestingly enough, Yanai HaMelech was, even when at the time that he died, he even left the tzavah. He arrested the rest of the chachamim that he never killed, that he didn't kill. He had them all arrested right before, and he instructed the prison guards and the head of the prison, that when I pass on, when I die, I want you to kill all these chachamim. So that would have been an immediate edict, a decree. However, this Shlomtia, she knew about this, and she wanted to thwart this evil decree. So when Yanai died, she didn't let anybody know. Nobody knew that Yanai died. And then she went and she had all the Chachamim freed. And at that point already, it was already too late. And in fact, the Gemara says, there's a Masechta, there's one of the Masechtas that the Chachamim made when they made all the holidays. And when Yanai died, Klal Yisrael made a yontif. That's some interesting thing. So how sad it is that a Jewish king had to die for Klal Yisrael to have a yontif, because they were so happy that finally this person this king was an evil king, and he died. So let's get back to Yeshua ben Parachia. Now, when Yeshua ben Parachia was coming back, there's a bit of history, isn't it interesting? Yeshua ben Parachia was coming back from Alexandria, and he stopped in an inn for the night, for the evening. And in the morning, right before he's leaving, he tells his Talmidim, he was escorted by Talmidim, and he said, the balas, the person who took care of the inn, the owner of the inn, was a woman, and he said she's unbelievable. The way she treated us, and she's just a wonderful woman. She has amazing qualities. One of his Talmidim said something to the effect of, it's true, but she's not that pretty. Her eyes are a little round, a little straight. So he mentioned something about the eyes. Reb Shua Prachi got very, very upset at this Talmud, and he said, "I wasn't talking about a physical attributes. I was talking about the way she behaved and the way she took care of us. All the wonderful things she did for us for all the night. She respected the Chachamim, and he had him excommunicated. And who was this Talmud? This Talmud was Yeshu, is the founder of Christianity. And now this Talmud was put into excommunication. Now imagine he was a Talmud of Shuba Parachia, and he was one of his, considered one of his better Talmidim. So Yeshu, as he is called in the Gemara, in fact, this story is actually for about 400 years was taken out of the Gemara because of they used to have a censor. They used to go through the Gemara to make sure that nothing was said bad about Christianity. And it was recently put back in about 80 years ago. And the sense, so Rabbi Shua Parachia had him excommunicated, and he came begging that he wants to do tshuva, and Rabbi Shua Parachia realized that he must have been inside already. It wasn't just this, he blurted out a comment. Something was seriously wrong with what his neshama, so to speak. So he waited. And finally, the next day, he had decided that he was going to basically forgive him and bring him back into the fold. Because when you're excommunicated, you had to leave. Nobody could talk to you. You couldn't walk into a base medrash. You were in cherem. He came to him in the morning, and meanwhile, Yeshu in his mind said, "This is the last time I'm going to ask him. If he says no, I'm not going to bother anymore." So what happened was, the Rebbeinu Shalom orchestrates everything, obviously. So this is obviously orchestrated by the Rebbeinu Shalom. Reb Shua Paracha as he walked in, he was ready to say Shema, and Yeshu walks in, and Reb Shua Paracha puts his hand over his eyes as if he doesn't want to look at him, but he was really saying Shema. He just took one look at him, he turned around, and from then he became what they call a Mesa Samatiach. He started a new religion, he started talking curses, and he had a lot of power because he learned a lot of Kabbalah from Reb Shua Paracha. And with Kabbalah, if you're being opposite, he was a very good Talmud, you're able to do a lot of magic, so to speak. And he knew a magic. It's a lot of, I can get into this a long time, but the time is, of course, we don't have that much time. So I just wanted to tell you, this is the history of the time frame of Bishua ben Parachia. Things were happening. There was a changeover of king, and there was a lot of wars at that time, and the Chacham Nebuch were getting killed. So Bishua ben Parachia was a Talmud of these two Zugars, of the previous ones. And he says like this, Kiblu Mehem. He was Makabel. He also got the next generation of Torah. And we said Kiblu means it was slightly less of it of Kedusha as the previous generation. And he said like Yeshua ben Parachia Oimer, Asay L'chorav. It's very interesting the way he puts it. And we're going to just say the Mishneh and then we'll just go back. Asay L'chorav, make yourself a teacher. Make for yourself a teacher. Uknei L'chachavar. And when it comes to a friend, it's like acquire him. Basically, you should pay for it, so to speak. Kanei is a lashon of buy. And v'hevedon is kol adam lekavschus. And when you judge anybody, you should judge kol adam, every person, lekavschus. You should always do it favorably. So now the whole terminology is and how is these things all connected is interesting. Asay l'chorav, you should make for yourself a Rebbe. How do you make yourself for yourself a Rebbe? So there's tons of people speaking on this. So one of the things is obviously like this. The Gemara says that when a Rebbe, the Mishneh later actually, we're going to see later in Mishneh and in Pirkei Avos says like this, that a Rebbe generally has students and he teaches them. So as many things happen. First of all, he has to prepare for the students. Second of all, the students ask questions. So the Rebbe used to say, so the Mishnah says that from his Talmidim, a person, I forget who it was, it says, it was going to come up, he learned more from his Talmidim than he learned from his Rebbes. Because the Talmidim made him think. And it made him, every time he said something, they didn't accept it, because when you learn the Gemara, as I said, it's always back and forth. So it was like you're constantly increasing your knowledge, and also you have to be prepared better. So you are making the Rav a Rav who he is. However, the Pashut Pshat is, of course, that you have to pick a Rav. You have a Rav that is you don't have like 11 every time you have a Shaila, you go to a different Rav, because everybody thinks different. So there was a saying, one of the Rabbanim said, if you have a Shaila about sickness, you should ask a Shaila from an elderly Rav, because an elderly Rav, he understands more about this because he goes through life like this. And if he would have this, he would be in jeopardy. So ask him, because he's going to be more lenient. On the other hand, if you have a shaila on issues, certain things, when you get married, you have a lot of times shailas that you ask, you go to a Rav. He says, go to a young Rav, because he's going to have more, again, he is going to feel more lenient to you, because he understands that it's difficult many times. He's always going to say no, then and between husband and wife there could be problems. So therefore, you should ask. So you pick. So, but he says like this: when it comes to a general Rav that's going to guide you, take one and stick with him. Asay l'charav, one, because like this you understand that you'll become closer to him, and also he's gonna know that you trust him, and he's gonna have a certain, the Rebbe puts a sort of a chain into a Rebbe, that he wants to please and make sure that the student, but the student becomes a child. We learn from Pasuk, from Moshe and Aaron, that if somebody teaches somebody the Torah, it's a ke'elu yolda. It's as if it becomes his child. Now, a person will treat his child certainly differently than a stranger. There was a Rosh Hashiva, he passed away relatively young in Montreal. His name was Martel Weinberg. Very, very chashuv man. He was somebody was a tremendous Talmid Chacham, and he was once going to a wedding out of town. It was for one of his Talmidim, and he always used to take along a bacher. He was usually the Rabbanim didn't travel alone; it wasn't covered, so they usually took along one bacher that to travel with him. They go to the wedding, and they're staying in a hotel, and they get to the wedding, and he dances and he stays. They stayed there till midnight, till after midnight. He's dancing with the chassan, he stays and he traveled for this wedding. And then he turns to his Talmud and he says, okay, I think we should go back to the hotel. They go back to the hotel, and he tells the Talmud, why don't you just go upstairs? I want to stay down in the lobby for a few minutes. Talmud says, Rebbe, we have a 5:30 in the morning flight. Why don't you just go to sleep? So he says, no, I prefer to stay here a few minutes. And I'll go up when I'm done. So the Talmud goes upstairs, and then he says, it doesn't make sense. He says it's a half an hour, the Rebbe doesn't come up, he goes downstairs, and he sees the Rebbe, he's saying Tehillim. So he goes over to the Rebbe, he says, Rebbe, we have a 5:30 flight. So he says, she says, I have to finish. So the Talmud saw something was very interesting, and he actually stayed there, and the Rebbe kept motioning him to go away, and finally he finishes. He says, okay, now let's go to sleep. So the Talmud says, Rebbe, what exactly are you doing here? What was this situation? So apparently he had a good connection with him, because he opened up a little bit, and he said, every time I go to one of my Talmidim's wedding, after the wedding, I don't go to sleep until I finish Tehillim, to daven for this Talmud at the wedding, that the Zivik should be Aliyafa, the Zivik shall Kayama. He said, I daven for this couple. And he's a Rebbe, it's his child. So he davened for this couple. He said after he had a 5:30 in the morning flight, he danced the whole evening. He wouldn't go to sleep until first, let me take care of my children. Let me first take care of my son, who is my Talmud now, who just got married. That is typical of a Rebbe that becomes close to a Talmud, and if you pick one Rebbe, then you certainly will have that closeness to a Talmud. Now you have another situation. How do the Rabbanan? I'm going to give you another situation. There was in the 30s, the first Chafetz Chaim that opened was opened by Penech Libowitz. He was a nephew of the Chafetz Chaim, and he was and the one Yantiv, the Rebbe Chanan Wasserman, who was one of the Gedolim of Europe, who actually was killed in the war. He went back even when the war started. He says, "I don't want to leave my Talmidim alone." Another show how these Rabbanim cared so much, and he knew he was going into fire, but he went back. And Rebbe Chanan Wasserman said, "I'm going to stay by you on Rosh Hashanah. I'm going to daven in your shul." So of course everybody was very excited. All the whole yeshiva was excited. The big Rosh Yeshiva of Chanan Wasserman. And after he finishes davening with Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Chanan goes over to Rabbi Henach Leibowitz, and Rabbi Henach Leibowitz was a kohen, and he says, "You know, your duchening, you were singing by duchening, and you sang a little too long. And if you sing too long, it's like a hefsek in the middle of Shmona Esrei, and you shouldn't do that." So Reb Henach says, "Okay, I won't. Okay, thank you very much. I won't go." When he gets back home, and he had invited Talmidim to his house, and Talmidim asks, "So what's the halacha?" So Reb Henach says, "You know, in Mishneh Berurah it says, the Chafetz Chaim writes that singing is part of the davening and it's part of the duchening, and it's not considered a hefsek, and shine. So fine." The next day, second day Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Henach Leibowitz goes over to the Talmud, to the rest of the Kahanim before his duchens, and he says, "I want you to cut this short. Don't sing as long as you usually sing." And that's what they did. After davening, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman went over to him and said, "You know, I saw that you cut it short, but I made a mistake. The Chafetz Chaim says that you really is part of davening, and you didn't have to cut it short." So the Talmidim were looking at both of these Rabbanim. So really what was happening was this. Reb Henach Leibowitz felt like almost like a Talmud from Reb Chanan Wasserman, who used to learn together. He was a Talmud of the Chafetz Chaim, and he was one of his Choshev Talmidim. And he said like this: If the Chanan Wasserman says I shouldn't do it, I'm not going to do it. It says in Shulchan Aruch, the Kavod Harav, it impels me to do this. On the other hand, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman said, "Truth is truth. I told him a halacha, and my Rebbe, who was a Chafetz Chaim, says that you don't have to cut it short." So it just goes to show over here, a Rebbe it goes both ways. He feels towards the other, he has, there are cherets to there, and this Henach Leibowitz was a tremendous Talmid Chacham as well. And he had the cherets to Rabbi Chanan Wasserman. On the other hand, he did it. And he went over to him to say, "No, I made a mistake." That also shows godless. Asay l'charav is telling you, you pick the one person that you think will guide you, that has everything you could want to push you forward in life. And that's especially when somebody just gets started in marriage. It's very important that they connect themselves to somebody who is somebody that you will listen to. You don't have to necessarily always agree with him, but you will listen to him because he is, it's important that you have guidance. And then what happens if you get into a city that there is no Rav? There is no Rav in the city. So you go into a Beis HaMedrash and you pick somebody who could be your peer, could be evenly, you both know how to learn. And you go over them and listen.
Sorry, I'm having trouble with the connection.
We need a Rav in Shul. You do me a favor, start learning, I'll fund you. You become the Rav. I'll accept you as a Rav, and I'll promote you as a Rav. And he basically makes this person into a Rav. And it takes 2 or 3 years till he gets to more the respect of the klal, but he created a Rav. And that could also be a Selach Rav. There's no Rav, make sure you have a Rav and promote a Rav. You have this Baruch Hashem, this beautiful Bata Midrashim with younger people, and the Rav is a young person. I look at them, and they every year they grow, and I've seen it recently with somebody. In 5 years, he became a Talmid Chacham, unbelievable, because people supported him, and he was basically a koil younger man. So you see this very often, and that's Asay L'Chorav, and that's I won't belabor the point anymore, but that's what the Mishneh begins with. On the other hand, Uknei L'Chachaver, you know. We're sitting here, and you have friends over here that got together to go to to want to learn 25, half an hour for 35 minutes in the morning. And this is what Knei Chaver means. When you pick a friend, don't pick a friend that you'll become close enough that you will be connected, that if you want to do something properly or do something good, the other person will not be afraid to tell you, hey, listen, this is not so good, or maybe we should start a shir, or maybe this is what you change yourself. Chaver, the word chaver is also means to connect. Chaver in Lashon Kodesh means to connect. We want to connect, we want to glue two pieces of boards together, two pieces of wood together. What do is they file down a little bit, then they make it rough, and then it connects together so that everything is even. Sometimes you have little bumps in it, you make it smooth, and two friends want to become really, really good friends. Each one has to bend a little bit and say, okay, this is what she wants. She's my good friend, or he's my good friend. It's very, very important that I please her, not necessarily if I feel I totally agree, but there's so much good here, it's not worth spoiling it over little bumps. And that's what Knei L'Chachaver means. A person should go out of his way to make sure that he has at least one. In Kehelis, he says, Shlomo Melech says, Tov shnayim me'echad. It's always better. You have somebody to speak to, somebody to bounce off somebody that you don't feel alone. Choni Amagal. There's a famous story, of course, where he fell asleep for 70 years and he woke up after 70 years and he goes into the Beis Medrash and he wants to learn. Now, what's happening in the Beis Medrash right now is it's a third generation after he was, all his friends had passed on. He didn't relate. You're talking about people who 15 years ago, there were no computers, and 15 years later, there's a computer. And what is this? What is going on? So there are people that were in prison, and they came out, and they see the things that went on in the last 15 or 20 years. It's an amazing change. They can't even relate. So Choni Amagal, after he woke up after 70 years, he goes into the Beis Medrash. He was so uncomfortable that he begged Hashem, either chavrusa or imisusa, that uses that loshon. Either I find myself a good friend, or please take me away from this world. And he passed away after that. Having a good friend is what nourishes a person to be able to continue and to always feel comfortable that you are going to not be alone. In certain circumstances, you have to have somebody. Nebuch, you find people who live alone. They age quickly, they get sick earlier, and they don't have good lives. It's very key, and that's one of the great things of going to shul every day, and maybe even the Daf Yomi, where you find yourself a group of friends every morning, and this group of friends you'll call, and the connections you make when you have these group of friends is a healthy connection physically and emotionally, and that's what he means Knei L'Chachaver. And then the last he finishes it up, you should, it's really interconnected. If a person looks at somebody and he does something that he thinks the other person is doing something wrong, and he's very judgmental. Somebody who's judgmental is nobody likes him. Nobody likes him. Everybody stays away from people like that. So you're not going to have a good Rebbe. You're not going to have a good chaver. You're always going to say, this Rebbe means himself. Oh, it's probably money. He wants to collect. There's always a reason. It's a personality. It's always a negative personality that you always feel that the other person is either wronging him or you call him a tzaddik. I saw him go there and there, and he could be going there totally innocently, and you would never know that this was the situation. There was Shlomo Shvadron writes in one of his firm. He writes that in Yerushalayim in his time, there was during the Depression time where there was literally people didn't have what to eat. It was very, very poor people. There was a couple of people that had some money. There was a fellow that had what they called a gold Napoleon. The coin of the time was called Napoleon, and it was gold. And that coin could feed a family for a year. It was an unbelievably large amount of money. It was worth a lot of money. He had one, and he put it on the top in a drawer, and that was that. His son, he had a little boy about maybe 6, 7, 8 years old, and he knew that his father had a coin. Now, there was a coin that looked the same size as this Napoleon. And also, like, you have today pennies. The pennies that were supposed to be copper. When we grew up, it was copper. Today, they're just painted copper, but it's not really copper because copper is so expensive. So he had the coin of the day was also the same size and the same color, but it was worth 5 pennies. It was worth nothing. So this boy sees this coin. He takes the coin, and he goes to buy some lollipops. He goes to a store, and he buys a lollipop, and the storekeeper gives him 2 pennies change, and that's that. The husband comes home in the afternoon, and for whatever the reason, he wants to. He looks for the coin and doesn't see the coin. He looks for the coin, doesn't see the coin. He panics. Says he goes to his wife. Did you use the coin? Did something happen to the coin? It's a year's worth of food here. So she says no, and she's also panicking. So they don't know what to do. They're running back and forth. And all of a sudden, the door, the kid walks in holding a lollipop. He says, how'd you get the lollipop? She said, I bought it. So how'd you buy it? She says, well, I took the coin from the top of the thing and I bought the lollipop. So they started, so of course they ran to the storekeeper and said, you gonna, what'd you do? You had a Napoleon, you give him 2 pennies change for a Napoleon? He says, give me back the Napoleon, I'll pay you for the lollipop. He says, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't get a Napoleon. I only got a coin, this little penny, a nickel. So he says, they're fighting. So they go to a din Torah, and they go to a din Torah, and the halacha is moide b'miktzas is somebody who says, yeah, I got something, then you have to swear that you didn't get the whole thing. So so they said, okay, you know what? I want you to swear. If you'll swear, we'll let you go. And meanwhile, the other family is going nuts. He said, he's going to swear. He says, the guy's going to ready. He said, okay, I'll swear. So this guy says, you know what? Swearing falsely is a tremendous, it's a deraisa. He saw the guy was going to swear. He said, don't bother swearing. If you're such a gan, you're even very willing to swear falsely, I'm mavata on this shvur, don't even bother. And sure, the man lost his business. His wife couldn't do a shidduch with the kids. He had to basically leave town for the rest of it, and he died young. Both of them, husband and wife, died young from this agmas nefesh. Fast forward about 10 years. 10 years later, this fella who owned the Napoleon gets a letter. Inside the letter is a coin, a Napoleon. This is what the letter writer writes. He said, I was walking in the street. He said, my family of 7, we hadn't eaten in 2 days. I saw your son holding a Napoleon. I couldn't believe it. So I asked him, what are you doing with this? He said, I'm going to buy a lollipop. I figured to myself, a kid can go with a Napoleon to buy a lollipop. There must be loads of Napoleons in the house, and the family's not going to miss it. So I went and I played with the kid, and I tricked him, and I switched coins with him. He said, I did it because my kids were starving. I feel terrible. He says, meanwhile, things are better now, and here's your Napoleon back. I want to do tshuva. And this is how the story ends. The story ends that this fellow, not even knowing what he caused, which is something else. He's going to probably have to do the chesed for that, unfortunately. But you never, told somebody you're in his shoes. Don't even judge anybody. But on the other hand, this storekeeper was judged immediately, not even thinking maybe something could have happened to him. They didn't even bother asking the kid, did anybody talk to you in the middle? And he literally lost his life and his business, and everything went wrong after that. And meanwhile, all because you judge quickly, and instead of really believing him, because he said, if I would have a Napoleon coin, I would have it in my register. I don't have a Napoleon. And that is a serious lesson, and have it done as kala adam lekafschos. And with that, I'm going to stop. We should all talk about Zoicha, to all the refuahs and Yeshuas. The list is unfortunately terribly long. So Hashem should give everybody Yeshua and refuah, the schus to learning the Torah, and aliyas neshama to all those that passed away. And Miyatz Hashem, we should have simcha b'Toich Yisrael. Have a good day.
Amen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And turn it off on it. You there?
Still going. 1 second.